Let your mind drift back, beyond the walls of the present, beyond the comforts of the known. Feel the heat of an unrelenting sun, the wind carrying whispers of prayers and war cries alike. The scent of burning incense mingles with dust, and the distant clang of steel echoes through stone-walled streets. This is a land of faith and fury, where kings rise and kingdoms fall beneath the weight of destiny. And in the heart of it all, a boy, crowned too soon, burdened by fate, yet unwilling to surrender. The year is 1161. The Third Crusade, the one that will make legends of kings, is still decades away. But the roots of that conflict are already tangled deep in the earth. The city of Jerusalem stands at the heart of it all, a beacon of Christendom in a land that has known war for centuries. It is a city where the devout kneel at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where merchants barter in the spice-scented air of the markets, and where the sound of Latin hymns mingles with the calls to prayer rising from distant minarets. It is a kingdom ruled by a Christian elite, yet surrounded on all sides by powerful Muslim states. Each one watching, waiting. The kingdom survives not by the grace of peace, but by the sword. Every day, knights ride along its borders, patrolling the edges of an empire built on borrowed time. The rulers of Jerusalem know that war is not a question of if, only when. And it is in this world, this precarious kingdom clinging to existence, that a child is born. A child of nobility. A child destined to rule. His name is Baldwin. Baldwin is born into privilege, the son of King Amoric I and Agnes of Courtenay. His father is a warrior, a ruler whose hands are calloused from years spent wielding a sword. His mother, noble in birth but controversial in her place at court, is a woman of ambition and pride. From the moment he draws breath, Baldwin's life is set before him, a path of power, duty, and expectation. But the kingdom he is born into is not one of certainty. Jerusalem's crown is a heavy one. It is not passed from father to son in simple ceremony, but in fire and blood. To wear it is to inherit a world of enemies, within and without. In the halls of power, nobles scheme and plot. Their allegiance is shifting like desert sands. Beyond the city walls, enemies sharpen their swords, awaiting any sign of weakness. The crown is a burden, not a prize. And Baldwin, for his birthright, will carry a burden unlike any king before him. For now, though, he is just a child growing up within the towering walls of Jerusalem's citadel, under the watchful eyes of lords and priests who see in him the future of their fragile kingdom. A future they do not yet realize is already cursed. The city of Jerusalem is unlike any other in Christendom. It is not a city of peace, despite its sacred name. It is a fortress, an island of European rule in a sea of rivals. It is a place where the streets echo with many tongues, French, Arabic, Greek, Latin, where merchants and warriors cross paths, where churches and mosques stand in uneasy proximity. It is a city of faith, of relics and miracles, where the very stones seem to hum with the weight of history. But it is also a city of war, a place where banners are always ready to be unfurled, where the horizon is always watched for the next army marching toward its gates. This is the city Baldwin IV calls home. He is raised not in the luxury of a distant palace, but in the heart of a kingdom forever on edge. His childhood is shaped by the presence of warriors, by the clash of training swords in courtyards, by the stories of battles fought and won by men whose armor gleams like the sun itself. He is educated by the finest minds of his age, including one who will come to chronicle his story, the Archbishop and historian William of Tyre. Under William's guidance, Baldwin learns not just of war, but of history, of faith, of the duty that will one day fall upon his shoulders. To those who watch him grow, he seems to be everything a prince should be, sharp of mind, quick to learn, eager to prove himself. But there is something wrong, something unseen, something insidious, and it will change the course of his life forever. The first sign is subtle, a wound, small, unremarkable, but curiously painless. Baldwin does not notice it. Others do. At first it is dismissed, a minor thing, a fleeting ailment. But time passes, and more signs appear, scrapes that do not sting, injuries that do not bring tears. The boy does not flinch when he should, does not cry out when he falls. Concern creeps in. William of Tyre, the man who teaches him, the man who will one day write his history, is among the first to suspect the truth. He observes his student carefully, watches as Baldwin's body fails to respond to the world as it should, and slowly the realization dawns. Leprosy, the word is a death sentence. It is not just an affliction. It is a curse, a mark upon the flesh, a disease feared above nearly all others. To be a leper is to be outcast, to be shunned, to waste away as the body betrays itself piece by piece. For any other child, this would mean exile, a life spent in the shadows, cast away from the world. But Baldwin is not just any child, he is a prince. He is the heir to Jerusalem. The kingdom cannot afford to cast him aside, and so the secret is kept. Outside the palace walls, the world marches on. The enemies of Jerusalem do not sleep. The kingdom stands as a fragile beacon of Christian rule in the east, surrounded on all sides by powerful adversaries. To the west lies Egypt, once fractured, now united under a rising power. Salah ad-Din, known to the Franks as Saladin, a man of patience, of strategy, of ambition. He watches the Crusader states, knowing their weaknesses, waiting for the moment to strike. To the north, the rival state of the Principality of Antioch. To the east, the ever-present threat of the Seljuk Turks. Jerusalem is a kingdom of war, a kingdom that cannot afford a moment of weakness. And within its walls, its future king grows, carrying a secret that, if revealed, could shatter everything. For now, Baldwin remains a boy who dreams of war and chivalry, of banners flying high and armies marching at his command. He does not yet understand the weight of his affliction. He does not yet grasp the cruel fate that lies ahead. But fate is patience, and soon it will come for him. Baldwin IV grows up as all noble sons do, surrounded by the trappings of power, wealth, and expectation. His days are spent in the royal court, a place of stone corridors and high-arched ceilings, where knights in chainmail stand watch over every doorway, and advisors whisper in the shadows. He is a prince of Jerusalem, heir to a kingdom forged by war, a kingdom that cannot afford weakness. From the moment he is old enough to stand, he is trained not just in matters of state, but in the ways of war. He learns to ride before he can properly wield a blade, seated atop a great destrier, his fingers clutching the reins as the beast moves beneath him. He is taught the art of the sword, the weight of a shield, the feel of armor against his skin. He listens to stories of heroes, of Godfrey of Bouillon, the first ruler of Jerusalem, of crusaders who fought and died to claim the Holy Land for Christendom. To those who watch him, he seems destined for greatness. But even now, the signs are there. At first, they are easy to overlook. Children fall, they scrape their knees, they bruise their elbows. It is expected. But Baldwin does not cry when he falls. He does not wince when struck in play. During a riding lesson, he is thrown from his horse, his body hitting the ground with a force that would have any other child gasping for breath. He simply rises, brushing dust from his tunic, confused by the alarm on his instructor's face. It is William of Tyre who first begins to suspect the truth. William, a scholar and a cleric, is no stranger to illness. He has seen the effects of disease, has studied the ailments that afflict men, but this is something different. He observes Baldwin more closely, watches as the boy injures himself and does not react, watches as wounds that should cause pain elicit no response at all. And slowly, dread creeps in. Leprosy. Even the word carries weight. It is a disease spoken of in hushed tones, a punishment from God, a curse of the flesh. It begins in small ways, numbness, a loss of sensation, but it never stops there. Over time, the body decays. The nerves die, the skin withers, the fingers curl, the face becomes unrecognizable, the voice weakens, the flesh rots away, while the mind remains painfully aware of it all. In the world of Baldwin IV, leprosy is not just a disease, it is a sentence. The afflicted are cast out, sent beyond the city walls to live in colonies of the damned, away from the sight of the healthy. But Baldwin is no common child. He is the heir to a kingdom, and so a choice must be made. The court is silent when the truth is spoken aloud. A leper, the future king of Jerusalem. It is unthinkable. A ruler must be strong, must lead armies into battle, must stand before his people as a symbol of power. How can a boy who may not even live to adulthood bear the weight of a crown? There are whispers. Quiet, careful. Should he be cast aside, hidden away? Should another be named heir in his place? But Amalric, Baldwin's father, does not waver. His son is still his son. The throne is still his by right. The disease is known, but it is not yet visible. Baldwin does not yet bear the marks of his affliction. He can still ride, still fight, still learn. For now, the secret is kept. For now, Baldwin will be raised as any other heir would be. And perhaps, just perhaps, fate will be kind. But fate is rarely kind. The years pass and Baldwin grows. He does not yet show the outward signs of his disease, but those closest to him watch with apprehension. He trains with the other noble sons, but there are differences now. He does not feel pain the way they do. He does not notice when his skin is cut or bruised. When they spar with wooden swords, he does not flinch at the strikes that land. Some of the boys envy him. They do not understand the truth of it. They do not understand that pain, in its own way, is a gift. Without it, wounds fester. Without it, injuries go unnoticed. Without it, the body decays in silence. Baldwin does not yet look like a leper, but deep inside, the disease is already working its way through him, claiming him piece by piece. And the kingdom he is meant to rule remains blind to the storm that is coming. Beyond the walls of Jerusalem, the world does not wait. To the south, a new force is rising. Salah ad-Din, known in the west as Saladin, has seized control of Egypt. He is no mere warlord. He is a strategist, a statesman, a leader unlike any the Crusaders have faced before. He watches Jerusalem with patient eyes, knowing that time is on his side. The Franks are divided, their kingdom fragile. He will not rush. He will not waste his strength on reckless attacks. But when the time is right, he will strike, and Jerusalem will burn. Baldwin's father, Amalric, understands the danger. He is a warrior king, a man who has spent his life fighting to keep his kingdom intact. He knows that war is inevitable, that the fate of the Holy Land hangs by a thread. But before he can see the battle to come, fate intervenes. In 1174, Amalric falls ill. It is sudden, swift. Within days, the strong, battle-hardened king is reduced to a shadow of himself. His body weakens, his breath grows ragged. He has ruled Jerusalem for over a decade, has fought to hold his kingdom together against impossible odds. But even kings cannot fight death. When the fever finally takes him, the kingdom is left leaderless. And Baldwin, just 13 years old, is thrust into a role he was never meant to take so soon. The boy king of Jerusalem, a leper crowned in gold. The court does not know what to do. A child now sits upon the throne of Jerusalem, a child who carries within him a disease that will one day claim his life. The nobles argue. Some whisper that he should be removed, that a stronger man should take his place. Others insist that his rule must be upheld. But Baldwin does not hesitate. From the moment the crown is placed upon his head, he does not act as a child. He does not shrink from his duty. He is young, but he is not weak. He is sick, but he will not be broken. If he is to rule, he will do so as a king. And if he is to die, he will do so as a warrior. A boy king sits on the throne of Jerusalem. The court is uneasy. A child alone is a dangerous thing in a kingdom surrounded by enemies. A sickly child? Even more so. But Baldwin first is not alone. At his side stands Raymond of Tripoli, a seasoned statesman chosen as his regent. Wise and politically shrewd, Raymond is tasked with keeping the kingdom stable until Baldwin comes of age. It is a tenuous balance. To the north, the Principality of Antioch watches with interest. To the south, the great Muslim leader Salah ad-Din is growing ever stronger, and within Jerusalem itself, the great noble families whisper behind closed doors. Baldwin's rule is still new, untested, and in the Holy Land, weakness invites war. The first challenge comes swiftly. In 1175, Salah ad-Din consolidates his power in Egypt and Syria, uniting the Muslim world in a way no leader has done since the days of Nur ad-Din. He controls Cairo and Damascus, two of the greatest cities of Islam, and now turns his gaze toward the Crusader states. Jerusalem is the ultimate prize, but he is patient. He does not attack blindly. Instead, he probes, testing the resolve of the young king. His forces raid Christian lands, striking border fortresses, retreating before Jerusalem's armies can muster. He is searching for weakness. And Baldwin knows it. Despite his youth, Baldwin understands that survival means action. He cannot afford to sit behind the walls of Jerusalem and wait for his enemies to come to him. If he is to be seen as a true king, he must lead. And so he does. His first campaign comes in 1176. Salah ad-Din's forces threaten the kingdom's borders, but rather than waiting for them to strike, Baldwin rides out to meet them. He is barely 15, a leper, and yet, on the battlefield, he is something else entirely. The desert sun burns overhead as the armies clash. Baldwin rides at the head of his knights, his body clad in chain mail, his face hidden beneath the shadow of his great helm. The disease is there, creeping beneath his skin, but in this moment it does not matter. His men see not a sickly boy, but a warrior, a king. The charge breaks the enemy lines. It is a victory, small but significant, a message to Salah ad-Din. Jerusalem will not be taken easily, but the war is far from over. For the next several years, Baldwin's rule is defined by conflict. His kingdom is under constant threat, yet time and time again he proves himself. He is young, but he is no mere figurehead. He is a commander, a strategist, a warrior king in every sense of the word. And all the while his body betrays him. The disease advances. The first visible signs begin to appear. His fingers stiffen. His face loses its youthful smoothness, the damage beneath his skin creeping ever outward. The court watches with unease. How long can a leper hold a kingdom together? The year is 1177. The kingdom of Jerusalem stands at a precipice. Baldwin IV, now 16, is a king in title, but not in full authority. Though he has proven himself on the battlefield, his court remains divided. His regent, Raymond of Tripoli, holds much of the political power, while the Templars and Hospitallers, the great military orders of Christendom, operate with their own interests in mind. But none of this will matter if Jerusalem falls, because beyond the borders an enemy moves. Salah ad-Din, ever the patient strategist, has waited for his moment, and now he strikes. In the autumn of 1177, Salah ad-Din assembles an army unlike any before. He marches from Egypt with over 26,000 men. His goal is simple: crush Jerusalem once and for all. And Baldwin IV, he has barely 4,000. The numbers are impossible. The Franks cannot hope to stand against such a force. Most of the kingdom's knights are far to the north, responding to a separate conflict. The city of Jerusalem itself is left dangerously exposed. When word reaches the court of Salah ad-Din's approach, the nobles panic. Some advise Baldwin to flee. Others say the city should be abandoned. But Baldwin refuses. Jerusalem will not fall. Not while he still draws breath. The king gathers what little strength he can. With him are the Knights Templar, a hardened force of elite warriors. Alongside them ride what remains of the kingdom's fighting men, knights, foot soldiers, any who can take up arms. They are outnumbered 6 to 1. Salah ad-Din marches north, confident of victory. He does not believe Baldwin will meet him in battle. He expects Jerusalem to surrender, to crumble beneath the sheer weight of his army. But then Baldwin attacks. On November 25, 1177, the two armies meet at Montgisard. The sands of the Holy Land have seen many battles, but none like this. Baldwin leads the charge himself. He is 16 years old, his body is failing him, the disease creeping ever deeper into his flesh. But in this moment he is not a leper, he is a king. The Franks crash into the heart of Salah ad-Din's army. The Saracens, taken completely by surprise, falter. Baldwin fights with a fury that no one expects. His knights carve through the enemy lines. Salah ad-Din's forces, so sure of victory, begin to panic. Then, a miracle. The Muslim army collapses. Thousands of Salah ad-Din's men are cut down as they attempt to flee. The great general himself barely escapes with his life. His once mighty army is reduced to a shattered, fleeing mass. It is the greatest victory of Baldwin's reign. A battle that should have been lost. A war that should have ended Jerusalem. Yet Baldwin IV, the leper king, stands victorious. For a moment, Christendom rejoices. The boy king has defied the odds, humiliated one of the greatest military minds of his age, and secured his kingdom. But victory cannot change fate. Baldwin has won the battle. But the war is far from over. The victory at Montgisard should have secured Baldwin IV's reign. It should have brought the kingdom of Jerusalem peace. But peace in these lands is fleeting. Even as Salah ad-Din licks his wounds and retreats to Egypt, the cracks within Baldwin's kingdom begin to widen. Factionalism, political intrigue, and the king's failing health all converge to set the stage for catastrophe. Because while Baldwin has won the battle, the war is far from over. In the years following Montgisard, Baldwin IV continues to fight. But he is not the same boy who once rode at the head of his army. Leprosy, relentless and unforgiving, takes its toll. His hands curl inward, the fingers stiff and useless. His feet weaken, then fail him entirely. His face, once youthful, is marked by the disease's slow decay. By 1183, Baldwin is all but blind. By 1184, he can no longer walk. But still, he rules. Still, he commands. He cannot hold a sword, but he can hold a kingdom. Yet the kingdom does not hold together. The barons of Jerusalem grow restless, scheming behind closed doors. With Baldwin too weak to lead his armies in person, power shifts between competing factions. One man in particular stands at the center of it all. Guy of Lusignan, Baldwin's brother-in-law, a man the king does not trust. But the kingdom is desperate for stability, and many in the court see Guy as the natural successor. Baldwin, however, sees him as a disaster waiting to happen. In 1183, Baldwin makes a desperate decision. He disinherits Guy. In his place, he names his 5-year-old nephew Baldwin IV as his heir. A child too young to rule, but one Baldwin IV hopes will at least keep the kingdom together long enough to outlive him. The sick king cannot know it yet, but his final act of defiance will not be enough. By the winter of 1185, Baldwin IV is dying. The disease has consumed him. He is barely more than a husk, carried through the streets of Jerusalem on a litter, his body failing but his mind as sharp as ever. He has ruled for 11 years, and now his time has come. He does not live to see what happens next. Perhaps that is a mercy, because after his death, the kingdom collapses. Baldwin V, the child king, does not last long. He dies within a year, possibly poisoned. With no clear heir, chaos erupts. And into that chaos steps Guy of Lusignan. The man Baldwin IV fought so hard to keep from the throne now takes it with ease. And his first act as king? A disaster. In 1187, Salah ad-Din returns. This time he does not come with 26,000 men. He comes with 60,000. He has waited long enough. Now he will finish what he started. And into that chaos steps Guy of Lusignan, overconfident and reckless, gathers what remains of Jerusalem's forces and marches to meet Salah ad-Din in battle. The place? The Horns of Hattin. It is a trap. Salah ad-Din cuts off the Franks' access to water, forces them into the open desert, and then he annihilates them. Guy is captured. The army is destroyed, and with it, Jerusalem is doomed. With no army left to defend it, Jerusalem stands alone. The city Baldwin IV fought so hard to protect, the city he bled for, suffers the fate he always feared. On October 2, 1187, Salah ad-Din enters Jerusalem. It is over. The Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem has fallen. The Holy Land, for the first time in nearly a century, is once again in Muslim hands. And Baldwin IV, the leper king, is not there to see it. His tomb within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre now rests beneath the banners of his greatest enemy, the kingdom he gave his life for. Gone. History does not forget Baldwin IV. He ruled when he should not have ruled. He fought when he should not have fought. He led when his own body betrayed him. Though he died young, his name endures. The leper king. The warrior who could not hold a sword, yet still won battles. The boy who should have been broken, yet stood defiant to the very end. His kingdom may have fallen, but his story will never fade.